All right. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a very exciting webinar by Joe Gansi, as you can see, on making the right choices in blended learning. Joe will share with us how to choose the right blend of approaches to best serve your learners. So without taking much time, let's start today's session. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks so much. One day I'll help Manasi pronounce my name correctly. Ganshi is my last name, but it's spelled Gansi. When I was 14, we moved to Italy, where my family is originally from, and I lived there for several years, and nobody would let me say that wrong. So I learned to say it correctly. Joseph Ganshi. Okay, very good. Well, welcome everyone. We are here to talk about blended learning and how to make the right choices in blended learning. The fact that you're here tells me something right away, which is that you have either heard of this and you want to know more, or you're really interested in starting this, or perhaps you already have started. So feel free to use the chat window to place any comments or questions you may have. I'll be trying to monitor that, but Manasi, you are welcome to interrupt me if you see something important that I'm missing in the chat window, okay? So let's move on and talk about the what is blended learning and how do we use it, okay? Let's go ahead and get started. If I'm doing this right, come on, here we go. Okay, so yes, sorry, I just had to reset this a little bit, but now we're ready to go. Here we go. Okay, so the idea behind blended learning is that we are diversifying our delivery methods and our instructional methods as well. And that's a very overarching 2 lines that we're going to now explain better. But the idea behind blended learning is that you are in fact going to be delivering in different ways and using different instructional methods as well. In so doing, we may be talking about a lot of different ways of having our learners, and they may be your employees, they may be outside clients, it may be whoever, the audience itself, the learner audience. You might be doing something like lab work and projects or not, depending on the content and the audience. You may also be, for instance, doing online instructor-led training. Now, a lot of that is happening right now. A lot of people are getting learning done by going to a live session where, in fact, just as we are doing right now, they are listening to an instructor, right? Okay, well, we also have many other ways of doing this. Real world group study. Now, this is where, if you have a larger learner audience, especially, can you not hear me? Hello? Manasi, can you hear me?
No, they can hear you now. I got the message, so I just checking. Yeah.
Okay,
they can hear you.
Okay, thank you. When you are working with a larger group of people, a learner audience, you might very well be wanting to split those up into groups, and those groups could meet offline, in other words, off the computer, to collaborate, to work on a project, etc. So that's another method that you could be adopting when creating your blended learning. Self-paced individual learning is what we traditionally call e-learning, and that is also, of course, part of this whole method of presenting blended learning. In so doing, you're going to see where and how you're going to be wanting to do that too, because it's not, when you start working with many different methods of delivery and different kinds of instructional methods, you have to think about the order in which you're going to be doing those as well. We'll be talking more about that. It could be something as simple as a book or literature, a manual that they have to read or they have to look up as part of their exercises. There might be group exercises and challenges as well, okay? So groups and individual is often part of blended learning, where an individual might be tasked to do something, but also you might be setting up groups of people, or they might be choosing their own peers for those groups to create a group type of approach in solving problems or in learning how to collaborate. Very often we miss this part when we are delivering just e-learning. We're missing the fact that it's okay, they're getting individual learning, but they're not learning how to collaborate with others very well. So let's keep going and see what this whole blended learning is about. Okay, so blended learning, you might be surprised to see some of the things that I'm going to be posting here. And this slide is really just a quick overview, but in a few slides, you're going to start to see even more things that you may not have ever thought of. Okay, a blended learning is a mix of several things. Okay, it could be instructor-led lessons, just as we saw. It could be instructor-led online lessons. So live lessons would be in an actual classroom or a boardroom or something like that, which until the pandemic was very, very common and will probably become common again. So within an organization, they might have a room that's multi-purpose and people gather in there to learn as well from an instructor, or it might be a specific set of rooms set up for training as well. I've seen both of those things. You might have quizzes that are taken offline, and that could be very well be just on paper, or they are, it could be on paper or on their cell phones, which is not offline, but still, think of it that way. Or you can also have quizzes, of course, online as well. Notice that I've grouped some of these. So we started with instructor, now we have quizzes, now the group projects offline, group projects online as well. And then finally, we have individual study and individual project online, individual project offline, and individual self-paced lessons online. These are the venues or the approaches for delivery. These are delivery methods. They're not instructional approaches, but they're delivery methods. Of course, the instructional approaches are part and parcel of all this, because you have to always keep that in mind when choosing which of these are you going to choose as part of your blended learning. Okay, so having said that, then what media can you use? Well, there's no reason why nowadays, especially, video can't be part of any one of these, really. You can have video that's, excuse me, you can have video that is shown in a live course that's physically, or you can have an individual learning offline as well, meaning that they're not part of a course right now, they're not together watching something, each person is looking up that video itself. The question is, what the difference between e-learning and blended learning? Well, you can think of it this way: e-learning is part of blended learning, but blended learning is not part of e-learning. So e-learning is a subset, and we'll be discussing that a little bit more in just a couple of minutes. So hang on, and we'll take a look at some of the ways that we can mix in these different kinds of approaches as well. Okay, so you can have videos. There's the kind of video where you have basically a talking head. Now, it used to be that we never would really think of these as very useful in courses, and yet TED Talks has become a very, very popular site, and that's basically what they are mostly, is someone talking to you. So you might have somebody who is, I don't know if I share my audio, but it doesn't matter. Basically, you can, if you're using a video that you've created yourself, or you found one on YouTube that could be useful, then yes, of course, you can use that in the course as well. I'm just going to very quickly go on to the next ones, because we don't want to watch the whole video.
I get scripts.
Okay. Another type of video would be animation that you have created yourself, or that you have used, you have licensed from somewhere, so that if it's pertinent to the lessons and the course that you're creating, the animations themselves might be very, very useful. All this to say also, by the way, you might be using these as part of an e-learning, or they could be separate from e-learning, because part of the whole idea about blended learning is that you're using everything for what it's best used for. So if you find that just a single video or a set of videos is going to be useful for the learners, they may not even be part of e-learning. They may just be separate videos that you're asking them to evaluate. Okay. Another one might be 360 videos. So in this case here, for instance, the learner would be able to interact with it by dragging the mouse around. This can also lead, of course, to having a headset if you wanted to, and if you thought it was really useful to have a headset that is in fact going to be very, very instructional. And I know of several projects I've worked on where having a virtual reality environment was really crucial to getting the very best learning for the subject at hand. Now, in this case, this is not a virtual reality. This is 360 video, so I can move around in this video and take a look at, you know, around the cockpit here that I'm in. There's the pilot, there's the engineer, there's the co-pilot. I can look up, I can look down, etc. So this is a really nice, if you think that this is going to be useful to the learner to be able to understand better. And of course, in a situation like flight training, this could be extremely useful. If you're not doing flight training, probably not. Now, I found a video from 1979, believe it or not, made in Finland, which is very funny, but also very, very indicative of what instruction is about. This is a video about how to open a door.
Kesken kaiken yhteiskunnalla on sinulle asiaa. Tiesitkö, että joka kolmas suomalainen avaa jatkuvasti oven väärin? Älä ole huono oven avaaja, sillä tuskin mikään on niin helppoa kuin oven.
Yeah, I don't know Finnish, you don't know Finnish, but, and the subtitles aren't on, but basically he's talking about how difficult it is for people to open doors correctly, and it goes on from there for about 2 minutes. Very cute, and you can run this yourself from the handout that we're going to be sending you as well. So these are the types. These are 4 different types of videos that could be useful in by themselves, or as part of an e-learning course, or as part of a test as well. In any case, you're talking about animated videos. You're talking about a talking head type video, but one that's engaging, we hope. And also, of course, a truly instructional video, which may be one that is 360 as well. Okay, let's move on then and talk about the interactive elements, because so far what we're looking at is videos themselves are usually going to be static in a sense that they're not going to be interactive with the learner. You're not going to be able to do much with it. The closest that we have right now is this one here, where the learner can control the view, but that's really just it. They can't really interact and say, they can't grab the yoke and move it, or and so on. They can't change anything in the cockpit itself. So interactive elements can include a number of things. Okay, so first of all, any interactive element that you create in an authoring tool could be used in both live training and individual learning. One of the reasons why I really love Raptivity is because what you create in Raptivity are individual interactions that are quite rich and quite engaging. And so these can be placed anywhere. You know, these kinds of things are very easy to include in both an e-learning course or by themselves online, where you can go directly to it and just take that that interaction. You can do so many things with this and really the sky's the limit. Right now, we have some game-based ones and so on in Raptivity. The site right now has 17 and more coming that are engaging, interesting. Some of these are game-based, other ones are not as much. And in fact, if you go to, let me get it up here. If you go to the website, you'll get a good feel for the different types of interactions that are available. These are the ones that allow to be used, as I said, almost anywhere. So when you look at the interface here, right now I'm looking at 8 of these, but of course I can scroll up and down. You can preview them. You can also select them to edit them yourself and make it your own content, your own text and images, etc., that you wish to use. As I said, some of this is going to be game-based. Other ones are not so much. A quick one that might be interesting to see would be like the preview here of the vertical parallax, where if you're doing security training or really any kind of training about the surroundings in your office or really anywhere, you can go ahead and create a vertical parallax one. I'm running too many things at the same time, so things are a little slow, but bear with me. It's not the website that's slow. It's just that. So here we have a situation where I'm using my mouse now to navigate, and every time I see a circle like this, I can click it, and it's going to tell me, oh, notice here the data is left unattended. I can go down and look at another one, and so on. So it's really cool to, as far as an interaction that allows the learner to explore. And these are the best kinds of interactions because the learner is in control. You know, the learner is actually doing the work and finding it himself or herself, really enjoying the process as well. So, okay, so let's move on and keep in mind that, again, these interactions, keep those in mind as we look at the next screens, because again, they can be very useful in almost any situation. Okay, and right now, by the way, there's a coupon code that you can use. It's on the website, 12+2, which means if you get a year subscription, you can get 2 extra months for free. So that's pretty cool. I take advantage of that if I were you. All right, talking now about how do you choose your media elements or your approaches when doing blended learning, because it's not a question of you choose some blended learning ahead of time before you even know what you're going to be teaching. No, you have to know what the content is. You have to know who the learners are. And based on that, some of the choices you make are viable and other ones could be totally not applicable. You just can't use them for that particular audience or that particular content. Each approach and media you choose really should reinforce the others. So think of blended learning as, I'm going to put different elements in here and have them do different things, not all maybe online, not maybe all e-learning. It may be doing some research online and coming up with an answer. There's so many different ways you can have learners learn. And the idea of just putting out an e-learning course, it's by itself is really kind of old now. I mean, I do it, of course. I do it for clients all the time, but it's not something that necessarily I would find optimal for every situation. In some cases, it's the perfect solution by itself, but in other cases, no, you really need to think about other ways of presenting material and getting learners engaged. But having said that, everything that you use should be reinforcing everything else. It shouldn't be like one outlier where you're saying, well, why is that there? It doesn't make sense considering the other elements that we have here. It should be a unified, seamless course, of course. It should be meaningful and cohesive. So the learner should never be made to feel as if they're giving things randomly. Everything should make sense from the standpoint of the learning. And if I'm the learner, I need to see that this element belongs in this course. And everything works together very well. So it should be meaningful and cohesive. Use really any tools that make sense for your curriculum. It could be that in the end you're even using a physical notepad and pencil as part of what you're doing, or it can be that you're going to be using a lot of videos or no videos at all. It just really depends on the situation. Okay, so the idea here is that you really need to consider an interplay of different learning theories and models. And if you're not familiar with those, well, there's plenty of help online with that. And if you really don't know what learning theories and models are, that you can look for them online. If you wish, you can write me and I'll try to point you to places online. So anyway, you have to plan, because it's not something you can just randomly put together either, not if you want to have a good blended course. So a lot of planning involved in creating this. everything is going to be a purposeful mix then of location and time. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. The delivery methods themselves, your pedagogical approaches, okay, how are they going to learn this stuff? Tools and materials and artifacts all really work together as well. So you have to think about what makes sense again there. How are the learners and teachers going to interact with each other? What are their roles? In a moment, we'll speak to that. We're talking about both formal and informal learning. Now, what does that mean? Well, formal is what you normally would associate with having sat in a classroom when you were young or in university. You might be doing that still now in your organization. You know, you're going for formal training, formal learning. Informal learning is that which you learn every day without actually having a set plan in place for that particular type of learning. So when we were young, for instance, we would have, when we were, say 3 or 4 years old, we would go to touch an oven and our mother would say, "Don't touch that, it's hot, it's hot." And we would be like, I gotta touch it, I gotta touch it, I gotta touch that oven, I gotta touch that oven. And so when a mom turns her back, of course, what do? We touch the oven, and then it's ouchie, 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 oh, that hurts, that hurts. Well, that's informal learning. We learn by doing every day the types of things we do, and then seeing what results from that. Now, all this comes out of the definition of, from my friend Aga Palalas, who is been associated with the organization, which I'm going to be discussing in just a moment with you, the International Association for Blended Learning. I've been part of that as well for several years now, and it's a really good place to go and learn more about blended learning and get resources, etc. as well. You also want to consider several other things. Okay, so think about, I'm going to go through these ones rapidly, but this is just a subset of many different ways that you can potentially have your audience learn in a better way, okay? So where applicable, you might want to have discussion forums, okay? You might want to have MOOCs or massive open online courses, which are becoming more and more available. You might take advantage of having blogs. Now, these could be blogs that the instructor is creating, or you could be asking your learners to create a blog on the specific subject that they're having to learn. So what have I learned today? Or here's something interesting that I learned. These are the types of things that can be certainly put into a blog. You might be also considering wikis. Just like Wikipedia, many organizations have internal wikis, which you can set up easily enough. And you can have then people use that to research the topic at hand further and be able to actually add to it, edit it, just like you can with Wikipedia. So it's a nice way that I've seen several of my clients use it, and I've actually incorporated this into a couple of my clients' projects where part of it is you're going to go and do some research, and then you're going to edit this wiki so that you can show that the knowledge you obtained is correct. Pretty cool. Social media, of course, which means Twitter and LinkedIn, Facebook, other ways that you can have them research or have them get information as part of the course. Well, I just mentioned Twitter. Digital storytelling tools. I cannot emphasize enough the idea of telling stories as part of learning, because that's how we learned since forever, okay? Storytelling is something that has been part of the human experience forever, and most of us love hearing stories, which is why we have so many books that we read and movies that we watch. They're all telling a story. And if you can incorporate stories into your learning, well, you've got a winner there as well. I'll touch upon that in just a moment as well. So stories, what kinds of stories can you create? Usually stories based on what the problems are that the learners themselves might encounter on the job, and how letting them solve those problems, okay? They can be the heroes of their own stories. they can be the ones who figure out the solution and feel like a real winner in that. Okay, so there's also, mobile apps. Mobile apps being, of course, anything on a mobile phone that can be useful as well. And nowadays, there's no end to the useful applications you might be able to use. The learning tools cannot be all incorporated into Raptivity. Raptivity is one great example of the kinds of things you can include, which is an interactive element. No, these, I believe that Raptivity does have a flashcard, or soon will as well. I'll be showing you another one of those as well in just a moment here. In fact, in just a minute, because these are the kinds of things that you really can incorporate pretty easily depending on what you need to have done. So for instance, if there is a massive online open course, if you never heard of that, just look it up, because there are many courses now online. If you find that part of an open online course could be useful to your curriculum, you already have it. You don't have to do anything special. Discussion forums are usually pretty easy to set up, and so on. So each of these elements are not difficult as long as they make sense for your curriculum. Educational type games, mind tools. We also have life simulations and software simulations as well. Life simulations being the kind that you need to solve in real life. Maybe you're talking to a customer, maybe you are negotiating with a vendor. These are the kinds of things that you might be simulating in a life simulation, which leads to case scenarios, which are where you identify a problem to solve. Usually you even use names in there, such as, Lawrence is having a problem with this client. The client is, Mrs. Smith or whatever. And how do you solve this problem? Let's help Lawrence solve the problem. So there. I don't know the answer to Buseletso. Are we going to be certified, I guess is the word. So Manasi, maybe you can write there. Yes, exactly. That's right. Raptivity is a set of interactive tools that you can publish to SCORM or XAPI, and have that become part of your progress tracking for your learners. Yep. Role playing is another great way of having learners learn the methods needed to correctly do their jobs, especially if they're working with other people. If they're one person in a corner doing something, then maybe role-playing isn't going to work. But most of us aren't like that. We are having to deal with team members. And sometimes those team members can be easy, or sometimes they can be difficult. Role-playing is a great way of doing things like, anti-sexual harassment training, or some of the ones I'm thinking, making sure that you don't have any kind of whiff of misogyny or racism in your organization. Role-playing can go far beyond that. When you're thinking about your own particular needs, they can be really useful. Okay. Ebook team creation, have you ever thought of that? That's probably not, where the team itself is in essence going to create a manual or a book or something that shows the bulk of all the knowledge that they learned, and then they can turn that into an ebook pretty quickly as well. Group discussions, of course, very useful. Situational learning, storytelling, we've mentioned that already, but storytelling is how often learners learn best, because they are needing to solve an issue in a story. Just like when you read a book or watch a movie and you are rooting for the hero and you're thinking, you got to do this, you got to do this. Hopefully in a movie theater, you're not yelling that out loud, but it's something that we all think inside, oh, you need to solve this. And sometimes we don't know how they can possibly solve it, and yet they do. And we learn something from that. Maybe we learn that it's a crazy movie, who knows? Student recorded podcasts, think about that. Having students record their own podcast as part of the curriculum, as part of what they need to do as well. So now, if you haven't worked with spaced repetition, it has been proven over and over to be the best way to learn anything, meaning that you're going to have a lesson one day, perhaps, and then a couple of days later, or 3 days later, or 4 days later, you're going to have a piece of that repeated so that, in essence, it becomes more and more part of your long-term memory. It's a really useful way of learning. And again, you can always look that up online to learn more. I'm giving you guidance on the types of things that you can include, but all of these can be researched online further if you're interested in them, because there's a lot of good stuff on there. Gamification can be really useful, especially when you're talking about team building and so on, but even individuals can be learning through gamification as well. I'm not saying you should use games and everything. It's the games that you use should be reflecting the subject matter as well, as much as you can. All right, what about e-portfolios? There's another idea. Or perhaps having student-generated videos that they themselves create using their cell phones. If it's so easy nowadays to take videos, we know that because there's millions of videos online now, billions of videos online that people have created on their own. And with our cell phones today, we can make a video that looks just as good as a lot of video did in the past using big cameras and stuff. Not necessarily all the time, but certainly can be done. So if part of the assignment could be go make a video of the process here, go make a video of that machine that you need to use to indicate what the problems are. Go make a video of a role-playing situation as well. Really cool ideas that people would love as part of the curriculum, and also generate some really interesting results as well. Okay, so in all this now, we are going to be emphasizing the fact that there really is no one set recipe, because just as is true for an e-learning course or for a book or for a movie, you're never going to have the same recipe for each of those things. Books are meant for different things, and videos and movies are as well. So when I say there is no recipe, it means if I'm going to choose to create a course right now with having them create their own podcasts and having them create their own videos and having some facilitating going on in group discussions, etc., because it really works well for this group and for this curriculum, the next course I have to do may be very different, and those things wouldn't work. So there is really no recipe, because every learning context calls for a different kind of blend, and you must consider the learner's needs here. Now, the facilitator's role in a case like with blended learning is usually going to be to provide expert guidance and expertise. Of course, they also might be teaching a part of the time as well, and evaluate and assess, provide feedback to the learners, okay? They might be promoting a lot of motivation and engagement, and also providing tech support for that matter. You know, if people are having any trouble, they should be able to know how to make that work for them. So best practices in this case are ensuring that learners have the opportunities to receive ongoing feedback from peers and from their instructors. So you have to also be thinking about not just, oh, the instructor is going to give me all my feedback. No. You might be getting feedback from your peers. Just like if you recall, if you ever had the situation, I know that sometimes when I was in college or in high school, we would have these quizzes or tests in class. And then when we were done, we'd have to hand it to the person behind us, and they would actually correct or sign off. Of course, the teacher was telling us what the right answer was, but in essence, the peers were doing the actual evaluation. So in a case like this, though, it goes farther, because you might be getting really good constructive criticism from your peers, just as you can from the instructor himself. So the instructor should be able to monitor the progress that they're making and be able to provide good constructive criticism and guidance. Okay, this leads to another topic you may have heard about. Yes, we're going to be sending this to all of them. Yes, we're going to send a recording and also a handout. So you'll get both of those after today. this leads to another topic you may have heard about, which is the idea of a flipped classroom. The flipped classroom idea is one that is been talked about quite a bit for a long time now. And it's all based on the idea that there are many things that we can learn on our own and should learn on our own before we start meeting in groups, etc. So if there's a new kind of approach that we need to take in our jobs or topic that we need to learn, well, if you think about it, a lot of the stuff that you learned when you were in high school or in university, you could have learned a lot of those things on your own and then just come to the classroom to have these group discussions or group exercises, group experiments, etc. So there's a lot of knowledge to be acquired first, which is an excellent time to use things like e-learning, times to use things like videos to watch or interactive videos, and so on. So there's all sorts of things you can do before you end up going to the classroom. It's not the same as tradition, which is we all go to the classroom the first day and we all learn together. No, it's actually more efficient for people to learn this first on their own. In a moment, we'll talk about how that can be a little bit difficult in some cases, but more and more, if you're thinking about that approach, you'll know that you can really have a very effective approach here. So the flipped classroom is in use now in a lot of areas and to really good effect as well for learners. Let's go on and then discuss now the advantages of blended learning. So we're going to talk about both the advantages and the disadvantages as well. The advantages include several things. So let's talk about that. Well, first of all, when you're using blended learning, you're using different parts of the brain. It's not just doing one thing all the time. It's not just doing one e-learning or watching video or reading a book or having a group discussion. You're really having to use different parts of your brain. That helps you to really learn things better. It just does. If you think about it, it's common sense, but it's also proven to be true over and over. You're using different techniques, and those techniques are strengthening the others. So when you are learning from a video, that video that you watch will strengthen, hopefully, something that you're going to be doing next, which may not be a video at all. So these are all ways that blended learning can really help to increase the retention and the ability to apply the learning that you have. Using each element of the blended learning for where each excels. That's another good advantage of blended learning, because if something really would work best in video, well, you're going to do it in video. If something would work best in a group discussion, you're going to use that approach for that part of it. So you're using each piece where it excels for your learners. Accessibility might be helped, and this is for those with disabilities. They could get more out of a blended approach. Blended learning also allows options for dealing with changing information. And this is very often the case where we create a course, but we know that in a few months or at least a year or two, a lot of that content is going to have to change. Well, it may be that with blended learning, you really don't have to do as much, because if, for instance, if you just create an e-learning course and you're having to now look with a lot of different updates to it, you probably have quite a bit of work to do. But if you have part of that as part of a group discussion, that part doesn't, that's something you would discuss in a group. So you're not really having to do anything new there. If there are other elements like videos and such, you can maybe swap out a video. That's not even part of an e-learning course. So it's easy to swap that out as part of the curriculum. All in all, you might find it much easier to update your courses when you have the different approaches you've taken. Okay. Designing with the learner in mind, of course, will always help to achieve the best blended learning. If you think about it, if you're teaching in English or any other language, but if you're teaching in English, for instance, and their primary language is not English, many in the audience, well, having several different ways of presenting the material may be very helpful for them to understand, and also perhaps to learn English even more, because you're not just talking to them in an e-learning course. You're not just giving them a book and say, read this. You're giving them many different ways to learn not just the content, but also perhaps the language itself, okay? This also helps to avoid focusing too much on any one of those technologies because, again, you have many different technologies you're going to be using, perhaps, or different approaches you're using, and it helps you to avoid relying too much on any one of those, okay? Of course, when you analyze the usability testing and choosing the correct products for ease of use, you're really helping the blended learning to be much more effective than any one technology. So again, making a proper plan in place, making sure that your learning is cohesive and that all works together well is going to be much better than just using one technology approach. Okay, instructional designers, if an instructional designer is really experienced creating videos, for instance, and writing scripts for those videos and so on, use them for that portion of the learning. If someone is a great e-learning expert, they can go ahead and use, you can use them for that portion as well. So you can really apply the different team members that are creating the learning to what they know how to do best, which would give you, of course, a faster result with more productivity. Yep, this is kind of a similar idea, so we'll go ahead and leave that. Blending learning could be more cost-effective and quicker to market if some of the pieces are already built. If you already have resources like videos that you can use and having group discussions that you already have in place and that you can repurpose, then you might find that in the end you're spending less than you would to do, say, an e-learning course. Okay. From the program manager perspective, the blending learning can be easier to fit together too. So from the person who's in charge of the projects and the learning, they can see blended learning as a much better way to approach the retention aspect of the learning because they can see how everything is going to fit together. Okay, what about disadvantages then? Of course, everything has disadvantages, not just advantages. So it really does require some schedule because, oops, I didn't mean to go too far. If you're thinking about it, earlier we talked about the flipped classroom, and we said there are some things that you can learn on your own before you go to a group discussion. Well, that before means that it has to be done first. And that means you really have to set up a schedule of some kind, because if the learner has not done that self-study first and just comes to the group discussion, that learner is going to be at a disadvantage. They're not going to know what's going on necessarily. So you have to set up a schedule. By this day, you need to finish this course, this piece of the course, and so on. And the self-paced idea is going to be a little less true in a case like that. They're not going to be able to do it anytime they want. But most of the time, we don't do that anyway. You know, learners learn according to a schedule that we give them. If any part of the blended learning is not done well, the whole experience might be lessened a bit. Not necessarily completely, but certainly a little bit. Security might be harder to achieve because if you are presenting just one kind of element, security is easy. You know how to secure videos, or you know how to secure e-learning, etc. But in this case, you have to learn how to secure a lot of different approaches. Some of those may not be important. Other ones may be very important. So security, meaning not divulging the information that you're presenting, could be a little more difficult with blended learning. Progress tracking can also be a little more difficult because if you're doing an e-learning course, you just do it as SCORM SCORM or XAPI, and you get your reporting, okay? But what about group discussions? What about watching a video? Well, XAPI can be used in those cases too, or you may just be needing to do those a bit more manually. If an instructor is leading a group discussion, he or she can make note of who's participating, who is given very good insight, who is having trouble, etc., and make that part of the progress tracking too. But yep, and as I just said, SCORM and XAPI, easy if you're just doing one thing, but more difficult if you're doing blended learning. Accessibility, we mentioned earlier, might be helped by this approach for those with disabilities, but it's also true that accessibility might be hindered because some things are going to be less accessible. Excuse me. So it might be that a group discussion, for instance, might be a little more difficult than watching something that has subtitles on a screen, closed captions. So keep in mind that if for those with disabilities, you might have to consider how to help in different for the different elements that you're including. Okay. Okay. Learners, of course, may be more easily confused by having different approaches, but they shouldn't have to be if it's done right. And getting instructional designers who are experts in different venues to work together sometimes can be difficult. If starting from scratch, the blended learning could be more expensive, or what I said earlier was it could be cheaper if you already have a lot of those elements in place. Or of course, if you're choosing elements that are not expensive to create, such as a group discussion. Poor choices could be made when selecting how to deliver. You'll get better and better at this as you do it. Of course, you'll see what works and what doesn't work for different kinds of situations, but it's possible, of course, that you're going to make the wrong choices for the kinds of things that you're going to be including, and then the results are not going to be great. All right, the look and feel needs to be transparent to the user. So the user should expect to see a consistent approach. So if they're in an e-learning piece, of course, that's okay. It could be looking very consistent, but if they're going to watch a video, there should be some semblance of consistency there where they have perhaps at the very least, a logo that is the same as the one in the e-learning course, or some kind of a symbolic icon, or even a look and feel of the video that's very similar to what's in the e-learning. The same might be true for something that they have to read, or anything else that you do as well. Okay. If you are very interested in blended learning, also, I recommend that you sign up with IABL.org, which is the International Association for Blended Learning. This is a very inexpensive membership organization. I've been a director at IABL in the past, and I plan to join up again here soon because this past year I had to bow out. I was just way too busy. But IABL is a really great organization for learning as international. It truly is international. So you might want to consider joining that as well. And that will be in your handout. Now, I want to show you one more thing before we close because we're almost out of time. And then also show you, and then also answer any questions you have as well. Let me get this open. Here, okay. So this is something I created a while ago, and it's a kind of thing that I reuse for different reasons. This is talking about learning a language, but this is a flashcard approach, okay? And flashcards can be used in almost any kind of content. So you could repurpose this for engineering terms or for anything really. So this one here, if you want to learn Italian, French, or Russian, the words that are in there are all the same in each language. So it makes it easy. So if I want to learn French, for instance, I can choose that. And then I can choose to show the English word first or the French word. I chose the French one this time. So le poisson, click here to see the translation. If I'm trying to remember what le poisson means, and then when I click, it will show me the English translation for that and go to the next word, etc. So le singe, the monkey, you choose that. I could have chosen instead to look at the English words first and then see the transition in the foreign language. And that's really useful if I'm trying to learn that foreign language and I want to try to remember the word before I see it. The approach we just saw is really good for helping us to remember what what a word might mean and go for that first. So show the English word first, show the Russian word first. We click on, for instance, that, and we have the word kot, which means cat. Okay, pretty close to the English word cat, etc. So all this is to say that you are able to pretty quickly create something like this, either with a little bit of outside help or in your own organization. You might have people who can do this really easily, and it can be really useful as part of your blended learning too. All right, let's see about any questions. We're almost out of time, so let's make sure that I'm just scrolling up now in the chat window and seeing what I can answer, if anything. That was a lot of material. Britt, you just raised your hand. Do you have a question? Let's see.
So it would be the last question.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to read, but it's does Raptivity offer the ability to host courses? Maybe Manasi, you can answer that better than I know that. Well, you go ahead and answer that.
Meanwhile, if you could answer the...
We cannot hear you. Oh, wait. Sorry, go ahead. I can hear you now.
If you could answer the question by Michelle first to avoid overall low learning levels.
Of course. What was the question that Michelle had? I'm trying to, oh, that one. To avoid overall low learning levels, when one aspect is not mastered well, can we build in early feedback and we do loops to address that? Of course, that's a really good point. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself. Well, you can always build in loops into your course so that when the feedback comes back as, ooh, a lot of people are failing this portion of the blended learning, you can go ahead and address that and then repurpose it afterwards. And that is as true as it is in something like e-learning. When they take a quiz or something, if everybody botches, everybody fails question 3, that's a poorly worded question. Or if everybody passes question 3, that may be also poorly worded because it's too easy. So yes, of course, you can build that in as well. You're welcome to email any of the Raptivity folks here, or to me if you have questions like that that you think about after the fact. Let's see, what other questions might be here? I think might be it, but if I missed any, let's see, one new message. Please see the Q&A section. Oh, yes. Oh, can I do that? Let's see, where is that? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment because I'm not seeing all my options. So let's see, Q&A. Here it is. Okay. Come on. Just a little slow right now. Too many things open. Don't run away yet.
Okay, can I read it for you?
Yeah, I got it now. I see it now, but go ahead and if you want, go ahead and read the...
Yeah, so Melinda was asking, is blended learning the same as hybrid learning?
You could, yeah, that's another way of saying that, Melinda. Hybrid learning is not as common a term for it, but blended learning and hybrid learning are similar. If there is a difference, I'm not really aware of it. And look, now you got me curious. I might want to look it up online just to see if hybrid learning is a specific kind of blended learning. But there's that. And Natasha, so blended learning, hybrid learning are similar. Very similar. E-learning, again, it might be just one part of that because you may also be doing things that are offline, or you might be doing group discussions or watching videos or having them research something and come back with it. These are all different ways of creating your blended learning. So e-learning, you may not even have e-learning as part of your blended learning solution. It just depends on what the situation is that you need the learners to learn and then deciding what was going to work best for them. I have worked with different, as an e-learning professional myself, sometimes it's too easy just to think of e-learning as a solution to everything. But in reality, it's not true. And I've learned over the years that there are times when a client will come to me and say, we need you to build this an e-learning course. And I'll evaluate it and I say, I don't think e-learning is going to be a solution for you here. Sometimes it's just as easy to change or fix the process that's broken in a company. Or it might be that, oh, you know what would work best for you here? Show a video, etc. It just really depends a lot on the situation. So, so there's that. So, did you guys answer the question about Raptivity ability to host courses?
Yes, I just answered that.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right. Yeah. You can host the interactions. That's what I've seen as well. Thank you. Puzaletso. I'm in South Africa, so where can I find the place to do this course? Well, again, this is not a course per se. You're going to be creating a course for your learners, and you're going to be considering what elements are included there. With the help of this handout and video, and also, of course, doing any more research you might be doing online for blended learning, you'll learn more and more how to do that. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. In fact, if you recall, the very first thing we mentioned as part of the things to consider are time and location. Your location may not allow you to do certain things and make it easier on the other hand to do other things. So really that matters as well. Thank you for your nice words there, Brett. Appreciate that. Okay, did I miss any questions? Are we good to go? I want to make sure I'm not.
Yeah, I think we have answered all questions.
Okay. Well, again, you're welcome to email the Raptivity folks here or to me to find out more. We will be getting that handout to you in the video here as well by tomorrow, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll stick around for another couple of minutes in case anyone else has a last minute question.
Thank you, Joe. That was indeed very, very insightful session, I must say. I'm sure our listeners appreciate the best practices you shared to create a blended course in a methodical and efficient way. Thank you to our audience for your time today, and we will soon share the recording with you all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.